The biggest one I see is, well, when I was 20, I did this, so I want to try and replicate that. And they're in their 40s or 50s. And what I always say is you have to train and make goals for where you are now, not where you were 20 years ago.
If you're enjoying the show and want to take the next step in your training, join our newsletter and receive a free 4-week sample training plan. Head on over to uphillathlete.com/letsgo, and once you sign up, you'll instantly get a link to try out some of our most popular training plans. It's a great way to get a feel for how we train our athletes for big mountain goals. Check it out at uphillathlete.com/letsgo. That's uphillathlete.com/LETSGO. Welcome to the Uphill Athlete Podcast. My name is Steve House, and I'm here today with Alexa Hasman and Chantelle Robitaille. Welcome.
Hello, hello.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So most endurance athletes don't fail not because they don't want their goal badly enough. They fail because the goal is too vague, or the plan is inconsistent, or the daily behaviors don't match the story that they're telling themselves. So today we're going to talk about how to set goals that actually will hold up when your motivation kind of seems to be slipping away and will get you to your goals. Chantelle, Alexa, and I are going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about sort of this idea of outcome versus process goals, which is probably familiar to a lot of you. We're going to talk about, and Alexa has some great insights here on this idea of self-identity and building systems and frameworks to help you get to your goals, how to build goals inside of the constraints, if you will, or inside the, I guess a structure is a better word, how to build goals inside the structure of a training plan, how different forms of accountability can help you, how to communicate and build goals with the help of others, whether it's a coach or a training group, and just some of the most common traps and kind of how to avoid them. So let's dive in. Chantelle, what is one of the most common goal setting mistakes that you've seen?
Well, 'tis the season, right? To be asking these kind of questions. I think that probably the biggest one that I see that gets in people's way is building a goal around an outcome. So the goal is a summit of a mountain, a time in a marathon, a particular race result or podium spot. And they have these goals without being anchored to the reality of the daily behaviors and other constraints that will make this goal realistic for their life and how they live.
That's Alexa, what from your insights, and you've studied sports psychology and are in a doctorate program around this topic, what is the biggest misconception that people have about this concept of motivation that us humans have created?
Yeah, I think we need to look at motivation as all encompassing, not the final outcome and goal, right? We always sort of put it on this final anchor of what's going to happen at the end, when really the motivation needs to be tied to the daily aspects of it, right? And so I try to teach my athletes that the summit or the race or anything like that is the cherry on top of all the work, which is actual motivation and the process of going about your daily life, completing these tasks, right? So motivation isn't the end piece, it's the entire process.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, this is we are whole humans after all, right? Like, we're not living in a vacuum. And I think that this is so important. Like, so many times people try to train like a professional athlete without realizing, well, the professional athlete, that's their job. They eat, sleep, train. That's all they do. Not all they do, but that's their primary day to day. Chantelle, I want you to kind of walk us through some of these concepts. Talk about the difference between an outcome goal and performance goal and a process goal. We hear these terms kicked around. Maybe start just by defining what an outcome goal is, for example.
Yeah, I think when people are thinking about goals, and as people are coming up with goals and plans, and this is not just January, right? Like there's nothing magic about the month of January. It's like there's nothing magic about a Monday, right? So you can change your goal, you can have a new goal, and they can be big, they can be scary, they can be small. But any kind of goal has to be specific. You got to be able to back it up with some action. It's particularly helpful if you can actually choose goals that are connected to your own personal why. And you also need to have some clear non-negotiables to make that sort of thing possible. So if we think about outcome goals and performance goals, an outcome goal could be a summit of a mountain. It could be, I want to run 100 miles. It could be, I want to improve my marathon time from 4.5 hours to 4 hours, right? So that's a very specific outcome. And so if we think about it from the performance perspective, that's measured by results. So that's stuff that is mostly in your control, but not all in your control. So things like, you're going to have to, if you're running the 100-mile race, right? That's your outcome goal. You want to be able to run that race in 30 hours. Or if you want to looking to improve your marathon time, maybe that's improving your lactate threshold by 5%. So you can mostly improve those things, but there's still going to be stuff that you can't predict that might get in your way of making that happen. The process goals are completely within your control. So they are controllable actions and behaviors that you have to be able to show up and execute on to be able to make things happen. So those would be things like working up to running 5 to 6 days per week, strength training 3 times a week, or even 1 time a week if you're not doing any of it at all, having 1 full rest day per week, improving your sleep habits, and then, sleeping solidly 7 to 8 hours per night, if that's something that's getting in your way. So thinking about the things that are, that specific goal that you're working towards, and then the things that you need to repetitively be able to do to make them happen. Because, Alexa, you had some great things to say about motivation. It doesn't drop out of the sky. And sometimes the motivation is there when you wake up. And sometimes the motivation doesn't come until you begrudgingly put your running shoes on and you're moving for 20 minutes after you've pushed yourself out the door. So it's that continual part of showing up that's really necessary.
Yeah, that's great. It's interesting, if we think about why people come to coaching or even a training plan or training group, that's usually or very often for an outcome goal. They want to finish a race or climb a mountain. And usually what we end up working on is the process, the daily actions, the process goals as you define them, Chantelle. Like, how much sleep are you getting? How much strength training are you doing? How are you running? Are you training consistently or not? It sort of goes back to some of the core fundamental parts of training, which is consistency, gradually increasing the training load and modulating the training load. And I like that idea that outcome goals are not very controllable. Like, we can't control very much about whether or not we're going to be able to climb Mount Rainier on July 15th, 2026. We can't control the weather. We can't control our partners. We can't control all kinds of things. But the things we can control for are like, did I sleep 8 hours? Did I did I train 5 days this week? Did I do my strength sessions the way they were prescribed, and those kinds of things? So I like that lens a lot.
Yeah, so
So
I
I
think
think,
having a plan's important, right? Like, you've got to look at the goal and you've got to sort of zoom away from that goal and think about what are the things that are going to be important, what are the success factors, right, to climb Mount Rainier or to run that race that you're planning to do. What are the things you need to be successful? Where are you starting from? And then you're going to, have your plan to block out how you're going to make that happen. And then you're going to intentionally train and do those different things day to day. And then also think about the things that support you. You, like you said, Steve, at the beginning, no one lives in a vacuum, right? People have, most of the athletes that we're working with, they have jobs, they have families, they have other responsibilities outside of this. So you have to have some supportive frameworks to give you the time and the space that you need to take those actionable steps every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the outcome goals are the inspiration, and the process goals are the building blocks of success. Chantelle, what are some practical examples that would apply to an endurance athlete? Like, let's say the outcome is I want to run UTMB next year. What would
Mm-hmm.
be the performance and the process goals in that example?
Yeah. So, well, it's a good timing to ask that question. First of all, you got to get chosen in the lottery. That's happening
Right.
today as we speak. So you got to be chosen. So let's say you're chosen and you know you're going to be there and you want to complete UTMB, right? So that's your goal, your outcome goal. Your performance goals, there could be quite a few of them, right? You've got time, you've got the amount of vertical that you're going to have to climb, all of that stuff. So having how fast are you going to have to move on some of that terrain? Now, again, you can prepare for that in your training, right? That's part of your process goal would be working up to, over a given week, making sure that you have about 200 vertical feet of climbing per mile, right? So that's very specific. You can plan that out. You can make a route, whatever. And you can work up to a certain vertical rate of climbing in your regular routine. But what the performance goal is maybe to be able to climb at a certain vertical rate that's part of maybe your race plan or your race strategy. But on the day, what you can't predict is how is the weather going to be? Is it going to be very hot and you're not going to be able to work quite as hard? So that performance goal might be kind of hard. If you have an outcome of being, let's say, top 10 in your age group, that's a goal that you might have. You don't know who else is going to show up on that day and how they're going to perform. So we want to make sure that obviously outcome goals are important. Having performance goals are also important. They challenge us. They give us something to chew on, to fight for on those days that we don't really feel like we want to get out the door. But we're going to be spending the vast majority of our time taking those daily actions and making sure that we are doing the training, that we are being consistent, that we are supporting our training with good sleep, good stress management, good nutrition, good fueling and hydration when we're out on the run. And that's going to take far more time than anything else. And they're going to give us the best chance of achieving those performance goals and those outcomes.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think performance goals are so seductive in a way. They like people make up these benchmarks for themselves. And I think uphill athlete in our early years, we succumbed to that. And we said, okay, like we think that we tried to tie it to the chronic training load. If you can train in this way for mountaineering and you have a CTL of a certain number for a certain amount of time, you'll be fit enough to climb Denali, or you'll be fit enough to climb Everest or whatever. But after a year or two, we realized that was complete folly because for a variety of reasons. But people loved it, and it kind of was hard to back out of. And people are always asking me, like, how many vertical meters a week or a month do I need to climb to be top 1% or those kinds of things. And they're seductive, but they're hard questions, and you ultimately they have to be very personal to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk a lot about sort of like A events, B events, C events, this kind of things throughout a season, particularly with trail runner and an A race, B race. Talk about that for a minute. What does that mean to you as a coach, Chantelle?
So if you think about training for different things over the year, I think it's helpful for people to have a yearly plan. So if you start with like a yearly calendar and you block out, okay, these are the things I want to do. So let's say if you're going to climb, you're going to climb Mount Rainier. Well, maybe as part of your preparation, so that's an A goal, right? That's a most important goal. So you're going to label that with an A on your calendar. That's a big priority. And then to prepare for Mount Rainier, let's say you're going to go do a mountaineering prep course. Well, that's going to be pretty significant, right? It's going to take a lot out of you, physically, mentally, maybe even emotionally. So you put that on the calendar too. And that's not an A goal. It's very important, but it's more of a probably B goal in terms of, it's not the most important thing on the calendar. So maybe you're going to label that as a B goal. And then in this case, an example of a C goal might be you're going to run your family has a little challenge to run a local 10K race or a local 5K race or something like that. So you still want to show up and you want to be prepared, because if you don't, and you go to run and you're not running at all and you think, it's 5K, it's 3 miles, and you decide like, yeah, but maybe I could win a prize, and you go all out, maybe you're not going to be able to run Rainier, right? You hurt yourself and you can't go on. So that's a C goal, something that's like less important, but still something that you want to plan for. And then map those out on your calendar, and you know what those are, right? You have them there, and then you can think about how can you organize your training to be most prepared for those things. The B and C goals often can be training and good preparation for the A goal. So the things you learn on your mountaineering prep course are going to be things that you're going to take back to your training after the fact. You're going to learn that, I really did a poor job with fueling myself during the prep course. I got to work on nutrition. I got to add that as a new goal now leading up to Rainier. I've got to get faster. I've got to get fitter. Maybe you have a 50K race that's prepared as a B race that's preparing you for a 100K race, something like that. So you have other goals that are maybe feeding into other goals. And when you block them out on the calendar, it also helps you stay focused, because let's say you get invited to something along the way and your friend invites you to go do the Grand Canyon. And that's a 3-week trip where you're not going to be running, you're not going to be climbing, you're mostly going to be sitting. Is that a great opportunity, chance of a lifetime? Absolutely. Is it going to get in the way of you completing your goals for UTMB? Maybe. So you want to be, if you have them blocked out on the calendar, it really helps you to stay focused to either know whether to say no to extra things that might get in your way, or maybe then you have to adjust your goals for other things if you decide to add something new in.
Yeah, when I was climbing full time, I mean, that was my personal mission statement, was to become the best climber I could be. So I used that filter for a lot of those decisions. In some cases, as you said, the detriment of missing out on amazing opportunities of going on incredible trips with great people. But I had to have decide what your priorities are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Alexa, let's talk a little bit about the directionality of goals and how to create systems to create progress. How do you think about systems when it comes to training?
Systems when it comes to training and creating goals. I mean, you want to look at basically what your overall picture is. Like Chantelle said, is you break it down into your A, your B, your C goals. Now look at your A goal. What is your ultimate goal for that? And you want to build not only that outcome goal, but also that process goal, because those process goals are going to get you there. And within that race, also, we want process goals. So my goal is to eat every 40 minutes. My goal is to stay at this RPE for the entire first hour of this race, right? So we got to look at it in this broad stream of things. And then we want to break it down of like, if this is my goal, how am I going to structure the rest of my life around that, or vice versa, right? So we have to fit it in. We all have other stuff outside of training going on. Like that's just how life is, and things come up randomly. But how do we fit it in, and how do we make it viable for our life, right? Like, does that mean I have to wake up at 5 a.m.? Does that mean I have to stay up late and get this done? And is that realistic for my life and what I want to do? And if it's not, then we need to change our goals, right? If it is, yes, I can wake up at 5 a.m. and I can get my long run in. Great. Let's keep working towards that goal. If that's not going to be possible, then we want to adjust from there.
Yeah. And, I could have paraphrased James Clear of Atomic Habits fame, where, he was talking about habits, but if we shifted a little bit, I would rephrase his famous maxim and say, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your training systems. And training is a system. It's a schedule. It's having, backup plans if you're planning on doing a gym, but it was a holiday and the gym is closed. What do you do? It's having accountability. It's having someone, whether that's yourself, if you're self-coaching, or a coach, reviewing your training and giving you input. I mean, that is a system that is self-feeding. How do you look at those systems? Like, kind of have these almost three variations, like kind of self-coach, self-directed. Maybe you're using a training plan. Maybe you're just using a book, versus like what you're managing every day and coaching in every day, which is our training groups, versus, one-on-one coaching. How do you see those different systems, and how do they benefit different people in different ways that are right for them at different stages, et cetera? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's different types of personalities, and each version fits into a different section of that, right? So you have to do like a training plan and be self-coaching, you have to be very motivated and accountable to yourself or somebody else outside of that. And that can be really difficult for the majority of people, because you have nobody checking and being like, hey, are you doing this? Then we move on to training groups, which offers a little bit more accountability, but you still have to be pretty self-motivated, because nobody's in your calendar every day checking on you. But you do have a community of people that are also training alongside you for their own goals. So you have that accountability. And then you go to coaching, one-on-one coaching, and you have that accountability from your coach, right? So like my athletes know that I'm going to message them if I see that they didn't complete a workout. I'll be like, are you okay? What's going on? Do we need to move this? Right? So you have these different personality types, and it works for each of those. Some people don't want that accountability. It doesn't work for them. It's too much pressure, and that's okay. So for them, a training plan might be great. And as long as it's uploaded into Training Peaks and they see that, that's enough motivation for them. Then there's the other end, which are people like me. I need somebody that's like watching me, because if they're not, then I'm going to play with the rules a little bit, right? So yeah, it's definitely a personality type.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Let's talk about sort of the identity aspect of being an athlete. And this is something that you've thought a lot about. How do you think about that, and how do you communicate around identity with athletes, both on both ends of the spectrum? There's those of us that perhaps over-identify as athletes, and those of us that under-identify, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we have a real issue with identity in this sport, in that a lot of us under-identify as athletes, right? There's so many times people are like, I'm not a runner. Like, well, but you're running. So like you actually are a runner. So we need to change this concept of like what an athlete is. I mean, it could be as small as running a mile or even hiking a mile, whatever it is that makes you an athlete. It doesn't the bigger the goal doesn't define what kind of athlete you are, right? We don't need you climbing Everest to say that you are an athlete. That's unrealistic, and sort of what our society has created around this is like, if you're not running 100-mile races, you're not an ultra athlete. Well, that's not true. If you're running, if you're out there, if you're working towards these goals, you are an athlete. And so we need to change our society's thinking about what that athletic identity is. And we need to work on that as individuals as well.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And even to take it a step further, I think it's really important for people to frame it in, again, like going back to sort of the outcome process, performance goal kind of viewpoint, is if we can have people think about themselves as, I am a consistent endurance athlete. I show up. I'm the person that shows up for myself to train 6 days a week, and I take one day off, one day rest day, and that's who I am. And I think that that's super helpful, because a lot of times I'll tell people, hey, if you've only got 20 minutes to do something, like do that. Like it's infinitely better than doing nothing in terms of progressing towards your fitness goals. And you're, going to feel better, and you're going to uphold the sort of pact you've made with yourself and your identity as to like what kind of person you are. You're the person that does your best every day, shows up the best you can every day, and puts it out there. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, there's this huge imposter syndrome around calling ourselves athletes, right? We feel like we don't have the right to do that. In reality, we do, right? Even if we're just showing up as much as we can, we are athletes out there. So I really want everybody that's listening to work on telling yourself you are an athlete and really resonating with that. Try and tell yourself that every single day.
And just to plug the Voice of the Mountains podcast, the day we're recording today, the podcast with John Windsor dropped, which was early January 2026. And John is this incredible guy who's a professor emeritus at Harvard and an incredible athlete his whole life, and on and on. And he talked really eloquently about imposter syndrome in that podcast. So I recommend people give John a listen. He's an incredibly wise man and incredibly accomplished, and he had to struggle deeply with this. And it's really common in endurance athletes. How many of us have struggled with this idea of imposter syndrome? And so I think that's something for us to all work on. Let's talk about one of the things that, and Chantelle, you probably have a lot to say about this too. One of the things that we've tried in the past is to say that we need to have, like, if someone signs up for coaching, we used to say, like, you have to sign up for no less than 4 months. And people thought that was like a money thing, but actually it was about, if you could give us 16 weeks to work with a coach, you're going to see incredible, tangible results. And a lot of people just aren't that patient. And we have to talk a little bit about how, particularly with endurance, and I think with strength athletes too, but particularly with endurance, the results lag pretty far behind when you do the work. Like, you do the work for weeks and even months before you actually can measurably notice that you're running faster or climbing faster or feeling better out in the mountains. And I think it's one of the messages I want to get across in this as we talk about these goals is to have, and I know you're a huge fan of this, Chantelle, have that long-term view, make that annual plan. It is season for building our annual training plans, by the way, for all the uphill athlete coaches that are listening. This is a reminder, we need to build our ATPs for our athletes and trust.
No, they should be already done. They should already be done, Steve.
They should already be done. I'm gonna say that I'm guilty. I'm not fully caught up there, but yeah, got it, boss.
Yeah, I think the long-term mindset is really key, because it's a couple of things on that. One, if you just work with a coach for 1 month, are you going to learn a few things? Sure. But are you going to get the most out of the experience? No, you're not. Because for most of the things that the types of athletes that we work with are doing, they have long-term goals. There are the odd people that have one very specific goal to climb. Let's say they want to climb Mount Baker. They're going to go with a group of friends, and that's a goal. They're going to climb Mount Baker. They're going to ski down. They want help for this very specific thing. They're not going to need any help after this. Well, chances are they're going to do that. They're going to have a great time, or they're going to have a challenging time, and they're going to want to do more of these things, and they're going to want to improve and do more stuff. So for most of us, we want to keep doing these exciting things for a very long time. And so having that long-term mindset is really important. And then you have the opportunity to sort of review how each season or each year went, make some small deliberate changes over time so that you're continually getting better, rather than just repeating the same, well, that worked last year, let me try it again. You may not be the same athlete you were last year. Maybe you have a new baby, or maybe you are now an empty nester, so your life is actually not the same. Maybe you have a new job. So things should change a little bit each time, right? And it's also helpful to keep some form of structured training all year long, rather than having like, well, I climbed Aconcagua and I'm going to stop coaching now, and I'm going to do my own thing till next year, when I'm going to work with a coach for 3 months before Denali. Well, many people will continue to be accountable and continue to train. Most people are going to slack off, fall off. And then when they come back to that coach in January, whoof, they got a lot of work to do to get ready for Denali. And they feel really discouraged because they know how fit they felt 8 months before. And that's not how they're feeling now. And they feel like they're going back to square one. And the older we get, the harder it is to start over. So having that long-term mindset is really important for many different reasons, and to think about having a plan that is long range, that is organized, that is periodized. And starting with that as a framework helps us to stay more consistent, helps us to think about supporting ourselves well with good sleep, nutrition, strength work, recovery days. All that stuff is part of your training, by the way. It's not extra stuff. It is your training. And they adapt. They have space to adapt when life stress comes in, if injury comes up, if illness comes up, because they have a long-term plan. If they don't, those things can derail people really quickly.
100%. And the other thing, I mean, we won't have time to get into this today, but actually be a great podcast just on its own, is just sort of the physiology of endurance adaptations and how they degrade, and which adaptations degrade first and which take the longest to, which stick around the longest is the other way to put it. And that slide is a thing. And they are starting over, as you said, they're almost starting over, but they actually almost are starting over. The other thing that keep in mind, and this was hugely motivating when I learned this when I was early in my training. I've been training, I think, for about 2 years, and I was out with a Nordic ski coach and in Nizama, Washington. Flash, if you're listening, it's shout out to you. But he and I were talking about this, and he said, and I later looked it up, and I found this, has been referenced multiple times in the scientific literature, that the average time it takes someone to fulfill their genetic potential as an endurance athlete is about 120 months. That's 10 years. So if we think 3 months or 6 months or 9 months is long, we'll try 10 years. And I think obviously like age can play a role. I was probably in my mid-20s when I was told that. And obviously as a 55-year-old, I'm not going to be probably a lot fitter at 65 if I start training religiously from this point on, but I'll be in a heck of a lot better shape than I will if I don't do anything.
Absolutely.
So Alexa, I'd like you to put your kind of sports psychologist hat on and talk a bit more about, the relationship between goals and identity. When is a goal too big?
Oof, when is a goal too big? That is a question I ask myself before every race. So I think we have to really be careful with outcome and performance goals. Specifically when it comes to comparing ourselves to other people, like placing in races or anything like that. That's a big one that we need to be careful of because we cannot control other people. And that's the number one thing that we want to think about when creating our goals. Can I control the other people in my race? No. And then same thing when it comes to mountaineering. Can I control the weather on the mountain? No. So the summit is, again, one of those outcome or performance goals that is like, you can't really rely on that. So what we want to do is we want to think about, is this realistic? Can I control it? Is it within my control? So like a time, that is a great performance or outcome goal that is a little bit more in our control if we're doing the training, right? Process goals are obviously something that we can do well. Those are totally in our control. So when we think about our goals, am I in control of this? Can I achieve it if I do the proper training? From there, is this realistic? Yes. Am I setting a goal that's like, if I want to go from a 5-hour marathon to a 3-hour marathon, is that realistic? Probably not, right?
Maybe
is this
not in 1 year?
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Like from one race to the next, right? Is this a realistic goal? We want to look at that across the board. And that can be really hard because how do you create those goals, right? And that's why having a coach is really helpful because they can look at that with you and be like, hey, is this realistic? Yes, maybe if we do this, if we change this in our training, yeah, that can be possible. So that's the big value of having a coach. You have somebody else to look at that with you and help create those goals. But otherwise, yeah, I think the biggest thing is to look at, is this in my hands, or is this in the mountain's hands and the race's hands and the other competitors, or can I control this?
One thing that I will say from my experience, particularly with professional athletes, I'm specifically thinking of a few professional climbers that I've worked with as a coach. When the goal is so big that it's in their mind going to define them as a climber in these cases, um, I've observed that they will self-sabotage the training. And I think that these things, they get too big, especially when they get public and everything feels a little too fragile, and they just they self-sabotage. They find they do things wrong. They just a myriad a number of ways because the goal is so big that it kind of threatens their whole identity.
Yeah,
And
and I think the number one clue to that you can see is in social media. You can see when people are like,
100%.
hey, heading into UTMB, didn't have the greatest training block. Immediately there, you're giving yourself a reason of this is why I'm not going to perform as well, right? So you want to be really careful about those stories that you're telling yourself, and also the pressure you're putting on yourself for those goals, right? Is this going to be an athletic defining moment? Well, you got to remember that one event never defines you athletically, right? One moment never defines you. It's a moment in a process of outcomes. So that pressure usually sabotages us because it's just too much for people to handle. But yeah, I think we often see that of people making these reasons why they're not going to complete these outcomes because there's too much pressure on them. And that's really it's hard to see, because what I would want for them is to reframe it of how can I still be happy with my outcome, even if it's not perfect.
I like that a lot. So one of the things I've observed both in myself, but also in others that I've coached, is that I first noticed this with myself. I'll use myself as an example where if I'm not exercising, whether you want to call it training or not, but if I'm not consistently, let's say, training more or less every day, my emotions don't regulate as well. Like I'm not as even. Like I'm more my emotions are more up and down. And it took me a while of not training to sort of realize the connection between that. So I'm just curious if that's an experience for other people, and actually a reason that they go back, because it has been for me, to being like, oh, I need to train. I need to do something every day, because then the rest of my day is much better because I'm more easily, my emotions are even and I'm like solid.
Oh, sure. I think we see that a lot as coaches during the recovery weeks, right? Like people
Mm,
just lose it.
Or tapering before a big
great
event.
point. Yeah,
Mhm.
of course.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there is definitely that correlation, but also like again, it plays with our identity. If I'm not training today, who am I? What am I doing with my life? Am I going to get worse? When really, what I wish people understood is you need that day, you need that week, you need that recovery time, and it's the same for us as coaches too. I mean, today's a rest day for me, and I'm antsy as can be because I'm like I need to get in my strength training, but in the back of my head, I know that that's not true. I need to absorb the training that I have been doing. But it's hard to express that when you feel this like angst to get out there, and you're going to take it out on your family later today because you haven't got that run in. So
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because those are the people that reflected it back on me where I first noticed it. They're like, did you notice when you don't do something? Oh yeah.
yeah.
So
Or
that's good.
someone important in your life says to you, do you need to get outside? Do you need to take a walk? Do you need to go run?
Yep.
Yeah. We see this in our pets, but it's harder to see it in ourselves.
Yeah.
Chantelle, let's bring this to sort of a real practical, like if we're coaching people, like how listeners actually kind of get some traction. What's a structure that you can offer for how to go through the process of creating some of these goals?
I think, some of the things we've talked about already, I think it can be helpful to take, before you start looking ahead, to take a look back. So, what have you been doing? And if you're kind of new to getting started in training, that's also okay. Like there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just information. So what does the training look like in the last 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, if you've been training more or less consistently in a year? What went really well? What are you proud of? What went really well? And also, how did you, if you had goals last year, let's take a look at those goals. Because often we say like, okay, these are my goals. I'm going to climb Rainier. I'm going to run a race. I'm going to do these things. Tick. What's the next thing? Like actually take a moment to recognize what you did and what you achieved. So, and how does it actually feel to know that you've done that thing? What are some things that didn't go well? Why? How does that feel for you? And like sit with that for a moment. Don't just breeze over it. And then as you're thinking forward, what are the new things that you want to achieve? Are there some lessons and things and learnings that you learned last year or in the last couple months, or patterns that you've changed that you want to carry forward? Maybe for some people, it's, in January, there's a lot of people doing dry January. Maybe in January, you learn that, wow, by just not drinking over 30 days, I feel less irritable. I feel like I'm sleeping better. I feel like I have more motivation when I wake up in the morning. Maybe your pants are fitting better. Do you want to carry that? How do you want to carry that forward? Maybe you consider you want to have a dry February, or maybe you decide you want to be a little more intentional about your alcohol intake, right? Just as an example that's probably tangible for a lot of people at the moment. So take a look back. How did you stack up? Are there some things that you achieved that actually weren't even on your list? Like maybe you did place top 10 in your age group in all races that you did, and placing anywhere at all in top 50 were not even on your list. Like that's pretty awesome. So recognize those things and think about all that stuff before you
Celebrate the
start.
win.
Yeah, celebrate the wins. Like we're so quick to just tick it off and next. But then if we have a goal and we don't meet it, man alive, we will spend weeks and months beating ourselves up. But we don't spend weeks and months being proud about the things we actually achieved. So maybe, reversing that pattern a little bit, I think is important. And then think about the goals that you want to have for the year. And you can be big and you can be bold, like write them all down, brainstorm them, put them out there. Talk to some people in your life about them. Talk to your friends, your training buddies, your coach. If you're part of our training group, drop it in there. Put that stuff out there and like see how it actually feels to think about achieving that goal. Like how does it feel in your body? How does it feel in your mind? And then think about really evaluating that goal. What do I need to achieve that goal or those goals, whatever they are? And write down those things. What are the metrics for success? Write them down. And then I find it helpful for athletes to go through the exercise of looking at those metrics of success and thinking, where I'm sitting today, how would I rank myself in those things? And so then again, it's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong, just information. It shows you where you have room to work, right? And that helps you put together those process goals to be able to reach those goals. And that helps you put together your plan. So then you can start to kind of like zoom out from those goals to where you're sitting today, and you have those things that you need to tangibly work on. Maybe it's improving your sleep. Maybe it's improving your the way you handle your recovery days. Having some strategies for handling recovery days can be helpful. So instead of thinking about the things I can't do, I can't strength train, I can't run, I can't ski, what are some things you can do on that day? You could do yoga. You can spend some extra time with your kids. You can work on some other kind of project that you've been avoiding for a little while and get something else done. So think about the stuff, like turn the stuff around into something positive that you can do. I know you're smirking at me, Alexa, but maybe you need to hear it too sometimes. We're all guilty of that. So think about the stuff that you can, the stuff that you can tangibly do every day to move yourself forward. Organize your plan. If you need help and you don't know where to start, get some help. We have lots of different training plans that, if you need a template to help you along and you need some accountability and some structure, we can help you with that. If you feel like you need a little bit more of a community because you feel like a lone wolf and everyone in your life thinks it's absolutely ridiculous that you want to climb mountains or run a marathon or run 200 miles, we're here for you. We got some weirdos just like you in our training group. And if you feel like you need, you have more complicated goals, or you just don't know where to start and you really need really specific and want really specific guidance, consider working with a coach. You don't need to be, the fastest, the raddest to work with a coach. Coaching is actually for everybody. And I think actually non-elite athletes need coaches more because they don't know where to start and they don't know what they don't know. And they have a lot of doubts. So not being alone in this process is really helpful for many different ways, for support, for backup, and for guidance. And working with a coach, I think, is like, I tell people, it's like, you're still in the driver's seat. Like, this is still your thing. We agree on the destination, right? We agree on the interests. Think about it like a road trip. We agree on the destination. Maybe it's UTMB or it's Mount Rainier or it's a half marathon, right? We agree on that. We talk together about some of the things that we want to hit along the way, some interest points. So here are some interesting things along the way, some, that we want to, maybe it's an amusement park. Maybe it's a place we want to swim or hike or whatever. And then the coach's job is to plot the best route to get to that destination while hitting all those interest points. Now, the athlete is the driver. The coach is just the co-pilot, but you agree on the destination, you agree on the route, and then the athlete starts driving the car. And maybe they want to take a couple shortcuts. Sometimes that works out. Sometimes it's a dead end. Again, it's okay. The coach's job as the co-pilot is to get you back on course and get you back to the next point of interest. So you're still the driver, but the coach is there to help you when you get off track, to help you take some shortcuts that maybe you don't see on the map, and to help you when you get a flat tire and that sets you back a little bit. They're there to help you change the tire and get back on course. And so it's a really great way to learn. It's a really great way to give yourself some challenges, because if you do get off course, you have someone to help reroute you instead of you being stuck there and giving up altogether.
That's all great information. Let's do a quick lightning round of some of the most common failures and some of their fixes when it comes to goal setting. And I'm going to start. One of the things that I've seen is a trap that people fall into is setting goals based on someone else's life, someone else's fitness. People need to be realistic. And a lot of this is, comes back to sports psychology. It's very good sort of regulation, emotional regulation exercises to write goals that match your constraints, the amount of time you have to train and recover, your age, your athletic history, the other stresses going on in your life, positive and negative, and write down goals. Alexa, do you have a common failure and fix for us?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I see is, well, when I was 20, I did this, so I want to try and replicate that. And they're in their 40s or 50s. And what I always say is you have to train and make goals for where you are now, not where you were 20 years ago, right? And that looks different. And it's really hard to understand that and see that and grapple with that. But that's the realistic view of it.
100%. Chantelle, what's one for you?
Goals that are too vague or don't have a broad, like don't have a real purpose. Like, I want to improve the VO2 max score on my Garmin watch. Why? Right. Well, I think it's important. Why do you think it's important? And you get down to they don't actually know. So it comes back to like having a goal that actually means something to you and that has a purpose for your life. Because if it's too vague, just like someone says like, well, my goal is to get healthier. Yeah. What does that mean? Right? So we want to have something that has a purpose, that is meaningful, and that is something that we can have some actionable measurable steps towards, so that we can continually check in every week, every month, to make sure that we're still moving towards that goal every single day. Because if it's too vague, then we have very little chance of being able to move towards that.
100%. You can't have 17 priorities. You can only have one priority.
Yeah, there's only one. Actually, priorities, plural, shouldn't even exist in our language, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a great place to end it and wrap it up here. Thank you so much for all the tips and pointers. We're going to write a blog associated with this article, and we're going to try to, one of the things I want to do is try to come up with a sort of a written form or process in this blog post where people can do sort of a goal audit. And I think that could be a really interesting exercise, and we'll try to link to that in the show notes here. And if you are looking for more structure and accountability, and training plans are not working for you, and Alexa talked about different personality types and what works for whom, investigate the training groups. Alexa runs our training groups and is a head coach for training groups. She does an amazing job in there. I'm in there often as well. And of course, we have our one-to-one coaching that Chantelle is managing that process of matching athletes and coaches to make sure that everybody, it's a little bit like a dating game, I think, like matching the right athlete.
Yeah, I'm a matchmaker.
So many things go into that, right, getting that right chemistry, and it's super important to find that right chemistry. So if you have questions, write to us at coach@uphillathlete.com, or send us your goal, what your constraints are, and let us know what keeps kind of breaking in your goal setting process. We'd love to hear from you. My name is Steve House. Thank you for joining us. One of the most common questions I get is, how should I get started with training? Well, they say the first step is the hardest, so let's make that easy. We are offering free 4-week samples of our most popular training plans for mountaineering, trail running, climbing, and more. Go to uphillathlete.com/letsgo to sign up for our newsletter, and you will not only get monthly insights on training for uphill athletes, but you'll also get a sample training plan. It's totally free, so why wait? That's uphillathlete.com/LETSGO.